Well, welcome everybody to another episode of How Outsourcing Works. I'm your host, Brad Stevens, founder and CEO of Outsource Access. And this episode is all about kind of getting beyond top of funnel, right? If you're a small, medium business owner out there, right, we're kind of beyond top of funnel when it comes to outsourcing and offshoring, right? You know it exists. You've heard about it. You've had a friend that's done it. But the next question is, how does this actually work? What can they actually do in my business? Give me examples, nitty gritty of the types of tasks and the impact they can have in my business, and address some of those what I call DFCs, doubt, fears, and concerns about going down that that journey. So that's the focus of this podcast. We like to keep it tight and short, high takeaway value for you. And I got an amazing guest on today, Mr. Tom Fox. It's a fantastic background and super niche, man. I love folks that have found niches and know how to go deep in it. And he's a fellow out content the competition kind of mindset as I am, right? You're not going to outwork Tom and I and how we kind of go about things. So I appreciate Tom being on. He's been with a client with us for a number of years and has really maximized utilization of his staff that support him and how he grows his business. So thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Brad.
So we will kick off as I share always, right? So you guys get some quick wins. Even if you don't listen to the rest of the episode, we're going to leave you with a cool, tech tool or resource or podcast that you can kind of take a win. We're always running across neat little things that we, add to our phones or a book that we've, engaged that's changed the game for us. So I always like to kick off with each of us maybe sharing the latest that we've run across here. And so I'll kick off real quick and I'll let Tom share his on. So on mine, look, all of us have got tons of relationships that we've built, in our lives over the years, right? And where do those relationships live, right? They live in our cell phone, they live on LinkedIn, they live in our email and so forth. And so for those of you, especially start getting kind of later in life more than ever, you've got all this relationship equity, but you want to be able to access it. And so there's a tool called clay.earth is the URL. And there's another one called Dex, Getdex, getdex.com. But basically, it will take all of your contacts and it'll pull them from your phone, from your email, from your LinkedIn, aggregate them into one centralized digital platform, fill in all the gaps, and basically give you like a digital Rolodex at your fingertips. And it has an LLM built in so you can search it, right? So I was on a big, needs and leads, event the other day, and somebody needed to, find somebody that was in financial services in Austin, Texas, right? So all I had to do was go into my Clay, go say, who do I know that's in financial services in Austin, Texas? And boom, search my entire, database. So really cool tool. Check it out, clay.earth. It's got the mobile app and the website, and also Dex if you want to check out a personal CRM that can help you out. So I'll turn to Tom. What's the latest you've run across?
So the latest I've come across is a platform or software called Gamma AI, gamma.ai, and they will convert anything you have into a gorgeous, beautiful, and very engaging PowerPoint. Whether it's a 50-page article, whether it's another PowerPoint, whether it's a text, whether it's a document, whether it's a spreadsheet, whether it's anything, and they will organize it and present it to you. You can then edit it, and you have one of the best looking PowerPoints I've ever seen, and it works at the speed of AI. So you're going to have a PowerPoint from a text in 3 minutes. And I create a lot of PowerPoints now.
And these things are getting better and better, right? I mean, you just check it like, 3 days from now and it'll be even better than it was, before. And so, yeah, for anybody that's intensive creative and having to create slides and get things out of your head, is there, so as far as the inputs that you do, what are the inputs that you give it to kind of create it? Is it audio inputs or, visuals? What do you got to give it to produce?
Typically it's just text. I'm a lawyer, so I live and die by the written word. I've written a lot over the years. I blog every day. And I need to send a PowerPoint that summarizes something to someone, or I teach and I need a new PowerPoint for tonight's class. Guess what? Class starts at 6, at 5:45, dump the text in, get the output, and I'm ready to go at 6.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, we'll obviously put in the notes and everybody check it out. It's gamma.com.ai, right? Is that the URL?
I thought it was gamma.ai, but maybe it's .com.
Yeah, I went to .ai. I think that's another busy. It's gamma.com.ai. I think that's there. Perfect. And last question on, will it maintain consistent branding and visuals? Like, can you kind of create a template? So when you create and give it text, it'll create continuity. So you can kind of establish your brand architecture so that'll, replicate it.
It doesn't need prompts, but it's essentially the same.
Gotcha. Well, there's your 10,000th AI tool for everybody for the check-in for last week. I mean, they're coming at us fast and furious, but making big change. So look, at the end of the day, you can't have your head in the sand when it comes to AI tools. You got to just embrace it and just become a part of that muscle that you build every single, day. And, the other day I used a ChatGPT to create a children's book with my two kids. My son, like he calls, eating his vegetables, and he called it, this is the boringest bean. I don't want to eat this anymore. I was like, you know what? That sounds like a great children's book title. So brought the kids up on a Saturday morning and taught them how to use ChatGPT. And before you know, we had a whole illustration of the boringest bean, and it let us upload our family. And it actually made the cover photo of the characters actually look like our family as well. So you just got to play around with it and use your, imagination. Well, thanks, Tom. I appreciate it. So let's give the guests a little bit more deep dive. I introduced you briefly, but just share quickly, kind of your background and kind of what you do day to day, and then we'll see how that translates and how you've been able to kind of use, VAs and supporting your growth.
So I'm a lawyer by professional training, and my last area of the law I practiced in was legal and regulatory compliance, even further subdivided or subbed into anti-corruption compliance. I've been on my own as a solo since 2010. And I started blogging at that time. I started podcasting in that space as a natural marketing outgrowth of the blogging. That led to founding a network called the Compliance Podcast Network, which focuses on legal and regulatory compliance. Founded that in 2017. It blew up during the pandemic when you couldn't market face-to-face or in person. And so since that time, I've just tried to ride the pony and consolidate and the growth I sustained during the pandemic. And now I podcast full time.
And what Tom's built is the Compliance Podcast network. So if you go to his website, you'll see he's built an entire just library of podcasts. I mean, Tom's cranking out podcasts at scale, and it's really the essence of kind of sort of the power of leveraging virtual assistants, and you blend that with AI. It's kind of like 1 + 1 = 4. And so I mean, I think we were talking last time, and you had an idea, and all of a sudden you launched 3 podcasts in a week, right? Because you've got the ability to put the assembly line in process, right? You have the idea, bring it to life, and pull it together. And so he's built this, entire network that gets tons of volume. And obviously there's targeted, advertisers and things that want to reach the audience, that he's got coming to there. So able to kind of monetize it and, kind of build his thought leadership. And how many books have you written now at this point?
38.
38. So there's a definition of scale. I thought I was out contenting the competition, right? Tom's my hero where that's concerned. So we're looking to do the same thing, because at the end of the day, especially with AI, it's all about know, like, and trust, and it's about getting content out there that's continually just give, right? You educate, you give, you add value, and it kind of comes back back to you. So, well, thanks, Tom, and we'll get in some of his specific examples. And most listeners kind of know me with Outsource Access and providing incredibly talented, staff out of the Philippines. We're going our 6th year anniversary at Outsource Access. We grew to 500 people in about 4.5 years, servicing 85 different industries with a major focus on supporting small to medium business. Not as a call center per se, but as a fully integrated staff supporting, working side by side, small to medium businesses in all functions: marketing, operations, sales, customer service, and then also things that are just unique to their particular workflow, which I know Tom will kind of talk about. Because a lot of times businesses have their own unique workflows and things that they need, someone to embrace and adopt, and ultimately even, augment and improve. So, we've tried to focus on that, and along the way, right, a big part of our operation, and Tom gave us some good feedback on was, the survey, the culture that we've created by surveying our employees, really caring about what they want to have an impact from a community standpoint. And so we really get them involved in giving back in the Philippines. We do a lot of initiatives related to United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and then really celebrate, our staff. We have our own magazine. We showcase them and their talents and their ability. And so it's the most fulfilling kind of company I've ever built as an entrepreneur, kind of helping kind of change their world and give them access. And then also, clients like Tom, and being able to help him scale and do things that maybe he wouldn't be able to do, normally, kind of bring those two worlds together. So we'll jump in now to kind of specific examples and, back to the message of how outsourcing works. So, ask our guests to, give us 2 or 3 just specific examples, kind of challenges that they had in their business and how they kind of brought in, one of our staff and kind of was able to kind of get them integrated. And then ultimately, to the extent there's any, numbers or metrics and so forth in terms of, the impact that it's had. So, Tom, love to jump into those examples with you.
Sure. So what I needed was, and I was thinking about it actually. First of all, we met at a podcast conference,
Right.
but we met at the last podcast conference before they shut the country down.
That's right. That was the last live event.
Last live event. Yeah, in mid-March in Florida. So the thing that I needed help with during the pandemic, my little podcast network blew up. And since I had nothing else to do, literally, I spent 6 hours a day creating social media. And that's one of the things that helped drive and sustain the growth I was getting. But I realized as we moved into the fall of 2020, I was not going to be able to sustain 6 hours a day writing tweets and creating videograms and go back and either do real work or expand the podcast network. So I reached out to your team, was able to get someone, and we were able to find someone, and she was able to look at the process and then start to take over the social media marketing creation. And so that was sort of the first step. It became much more involved in that. She was a wonderful asset, completely organized. I, in many ways, work for her. I go where I'm told, when I'm told, how I'm told. And she is essentially my executive assistant. We were later then able to bring in another asset who was very much on the creative side. And he was able to do things with the videograms that I couldn't even contemplate, let alone execute. And he loves doing that. And he just creates, I just say, do it. I mean, I'll look at it and approve it, but I always approve everything he does. So it's been a great partnership, both on the, I'm going to call it the administrative side, but also on the creative side. And I think that that is one of the strengths that you can bring. You bring a left brain, right brain skill set from your folks to people like me.
I appreciate the feedback, and that's, those are perfect examples of exactly like, when we kind of engage people and help them out. A lot of times it's this kind of these two questions that people have to answer, which is, what am I doing that isn't the best use of my time? And then how many hours per month am I spending on it? Right. And that translates into opportunity cost, right? I mean, so how many hours was Tom being able to, creating social media assets and then promoting them and what have you. And then, what are the things you're not getting to that you wish you could, right? Due to time, money, or knowledge constraints. And so, to unpack, a little bit more detail on that, that first VA that you got with us, and to give a sense, I mean, she was basically going in and helping create, right? And using, I think, Canva, was that the graphic design tool, or do you guys have a different one that she was using?
Canva.
So being able to use Canva, and that's one of the things that, and any firm you work with, any offshoring company, there's a bunch of great firms that are out there. But one thing we're fanatical about is training and creating access to training and materials. And we've gotten even way better than even when Tom joined us way earlier. But making sure that they've got access to training and tools and resources. And it's amazing how quick they learn, right? I mean, it's just the commitment to learning. With our staff in the Philippines, like they just, Tom and I were talking earlier before we went live. I mean, we got a company that has us do routing for them, this complicated like field routing software for all their technicians. And I mean, one of our team members, was up to speed and coordinating 1,500 to 2,000 like routing trips for, lawn treatment in a week that, traditionally had taken, 3 people. So to that point, right, learning software like that, learning like software like Canva, and then how to like squeeze all the juice out of it, right? So like even Tom probably, using a tool like that, probably using even bare minimum number of features. But when you have somebody dedicated and they're doing nothing but that, they're able to squeeze all the juice and all the capabilities and all the features of that software, and probably to even enhance, kind of what, you were doing initially.
Absolutely. Ed, you're absolutely right. The number of people I've interviewed, I've talked to them all about the tools they use. They're all functional in the tools. And of course, they're going to get better. And they are sponges for learning and information. Every time I would see a webinar that I thought they'd be interested in, whatever the tool might be, I would ask them to attend, and they would, because they loved it, because they saw that as their own professional development as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a hunger to learn and to grow. And a lot of people have heard my story. When I started Outsource Access, the young woman that I started, the businesses with, she was my very first personal VA that I found on a job board. And that young woman was able to kind of grow, and JCell to be our, our COO over, 500 people in 4 years. So, John Maxwell, a lot of you know his 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, and number one is the law of the lid, right? What's your lid that is kind of your cap? And I'm amazed always, but on the Filipino side, just the lid keeps getting raised, a willingness to embrace, to learn, to grow, new tools and resources. And to give everybody a sense of scope, Thomas, how many total podcasts do you have kind of right now?
How many do I have, or how many does the network have?
Well, I guess, as far as how many you're producing and actually executing, well, I guess the total number that kind of your team is helping you do the promotion and advocacy for.
50 to 60.
Right. So we have 50 to 60 podcasts. And so how many did you have at the beginning of your journey, when you and I first met and this thing was really kind of taking off?
Back then it was about 20.
So about 20 podcasts. You were kind of doing the heavy lift, but being able to add, resource supporting you, you're able to kind of more than double the number of podcasts to be able to get produced. And then getting all the promotion and advocacy and marketing kind of around it. So she was helping to create the content and then post it in all the different channels, right? Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and so forth, all the channels she's pushing all the content to. And then creating all the snippets of the assets, right? And so, whenever you're promoting, maybe kind of share a couple of examples for those that are either thinking about doing a podcast, or because everybody we talk to wants to be doing more promotion on social, right? But just they end up hitting a roadblock of doing it. So can you share an example of kind of the number of pieces she would create? So a podcast gets created. What does kind of that workflow look like of how many she would create and at what cadence she would release those things to promote that podcast?
Sure. So we create about 15 different pieces of social media marketing content per podcast. The four biggest are videograms, and we have 3 clips at 60 seconds or less for Facebook, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and X or Twitter. One at 2 minutes or less for LinkedIn. But we write out all the tweets, social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. And the key to my success is not simply posting those, but every guest who comes on my show, I provide the same. So already I've now doubled the amount of my social media marketing exposure because they're going to post that on their own social channels. They're not required to use what I send them, and I tell them, you're free to not use or not use anything. I said your complete discretion, but they're going to post something about being on the podcast, and that's just more social media marketing for the Compliance Podcast Network.
Yeah, you leverage everyone else's social media channels and their following and so forth, and that's one of the biggest shortcomings that I find. So to recap, right, went from 20 to 50 podcasts, right, and started being able to have the resources to support that, and then 15 pieces of content per podcast, right? That's a lot of pieces of content, right? If you're doing 5, 6, 7, 8, per day times 15, so the volume and throughput that you can actually execute, get created, and get pushed through the different channels. And yeah, that's one of the failings. A lot of people, I'm on their podcast, and all I do is get a link when it goes live, right? They're like, hey, Brad, your podcast is live, and that's it. They don't do anything. And when I have my prior podcast and kind of in the middle of getting, this one, relaunched is, we did the same thing. And again, because I had VAs that could do it, otherwise I wouldn't have, but give them pre-made content that they can then push and promote out to their following. Is it the same pieces, or do you customize them for those guests?
Customized for the guest.
So it's not even just the general same one that you're posting on yours. Like you have a set of assets you post on your channels, but then you're creating a piece that's tweaked specifically to promote for them, right?
Well, all of the pieces I post are geared towards the guest. People don't need to see me talking on my podcast with somebody else. They want to see somebody else. Right. Now, they say people come for the guest, they stay for the host, and I believe that, but they're there to listen to that guest that day. So I always highlight the guest and not myself.
So you're able to use both the same pieces of content, right, that get pushed out to your channels, right? So
right.
She creates it, then she goes into all your channels, promotes it, gets it scheduled, make sure that it's being pulsed out there with tons of visibility, and then emails it as well to the guest, right, and making sure that they have it and so they can push it out, so you get to kind of double the juice from it. So no, this is a great, perfect example, right? And so look, even if you don't have a podcasting kind of organization or, don't have a podcaster, but you can get a sense, right? This is the type of work, right? When you talk about how outsourcing works, it's taking those constraint points, right? Those constraint points of things that you want to get off of your plate, right? Or things that you're not getting to that all add up to a whole lot of opportunity cost in terms of dollars and value. And now you can translate that and get tremendous, ROI by getting those things done, right? And doing what I call is micro protocols, right? And look, it does take a little bit of thinking and time to create that assembly line, right? I mean, Tom, it sounded like you had an initial process that you were doing, but once you started, working, with your, first VA, it was, well, let's go map out that process and work together to define what I call that micro protocol, right? Which is sort of the little steps that you would do. And then it gets further refined so that you can then rinse and repeat. And that's what, people do need to keep committed to. And when we work with folks, we try to help them in that journey of creating those processes or share best practices. I know when I used my very first VA, I would go to the gym and I would listen to podcasts, and I'd walk out of the gym and I'd shoot a little selfie video and say, hey, Brad here, just want to share the top 3 takeaways from XYZ podcast. But then I'd have to download it, then upload it and get it. And so I just stopped doing it. And when I got my very first VA, JCell, that's what the first thing we did. I said, how can we go from me walking out of Lifetime Gym, shooting a video, to getting this thing to the Philippines all over my social channels? And so we realized, well, Vimeo is the best application to get a video from my phone up to the web. Then we set up the email address to be notified to go to her in the Philippines. Then she got notified, hey, Brad shot a video with his quick takeaways from a podcast he listened to while he was running. She downloaded it, then put a free tool to put the transcriptions on it. And then she would upload it to Buffer and then distribute all of her social media, right? So what wasn't getting done at all and getting me any leads now turned into a process that went from my phone to all over social media in 5 to 10 minutes, right? By going through that process. So think about in your business and your organization, where do you have kind of these constraint points that you can bring someone in that can help turn the crank and kind of make it successful? And so on the second one that you shared, specifically on sort of the video piece of it, right? And so you saw enough value in that portion. So maybe share a little bit more specific of kind of what he's doing on, the video element that your first VA wasn't doing.
So he can create a whole just animated video around somebody's static or dynamic interview, just like we're doing. And I can't even begin to tell you what he does because I have no clue. I've tried to figure it out and I can't, but that's okay. So whether it's fireworks going off, whether it's music, whether it's an animated AI voice, whether it's something flying in or flying out, he just loves doing all that stuff and it looks cool. So there we go.
And so by doing so, right, so he's able to amp up the content visuals, to another level. And so how specifically is that piece used? So you got all the 15 pieces that are being dripped and promoting the podcast and so forth. So specifically, are those? So he creates one per interview, right? That kind of creates, kind of a visual of, it's kind of a mini, is it full length or is it kind of a mini replication of what the whole interview is about?
No, it's actually, he does that for each video I cut. So I cut 4. So he does a different one for each one. So what he does is drives people engagement for that social media sharing material. And then they'll hopefully click through to listen to some or all of the entire episode. But it's engagement. It's somebody paying enough attention to that 60 or seconds or 2 minutes to want to find out more that he's driving.
And so the journey, right, that Tom's describing here is a lot of kind of what happens with a lot of our clients, right? 85 different industries and others, is that a lot of times they'll start, with one individual or a couple, and they're doing a couple of functions, right? And, in the first case, like she was chopping pieces up and getting the 15 pieces done and out, and then also helping just with the overall production and assembly and show notes. And there's all the other back end production, right, that goes on with these podcasts, right? In terms of getting them published, getting them pushed out to the hosting platforms, getting all the show notes done. I'm assuming they're kind of a part of that equation as well, right?
Yes.
So all, aside from even the social media pieces and promoting, right, getting all the additional mechanics and production elements done of getting these things pushed and show notes executed and getting out all to different platforms. And so there's a lot of pieces that kind of happen in that. But identifying something, and a lot of times, somebody will start with a staff that's doing multiple things, but then they'll find out that, like, hey, this has a lot of additional value. And so then they'll end up bringing on, another to say, hey, I just want you just to do, this piece, right? And so then people can get even more concentrated in their particular function. Again, something that people typically wouldn't hire at all because it wouldn't be, affordable for them in their business or depending on their size. But I describe a lot of times what this path does is it creates a release valve, right? And a lot of small to medium businesses, they're running full throttle. The owner and the key managers, they're saying, hey, you just got to wear more hats. You got to work more hours. I can't afford another full-time person yet, right? And what we found is a lot of times we end up being sort of that stopgap release valve that, we create a path for them to be able to bring on, a full-time, if you will, resource that now can release valve and now take that employee who would have burned out otherwise, or maybe quit, or, the owner who's probably, on the edge of divorce in some cases, or maxing out credit cards, to be able to create that release valve, an affordable channel to that. And ironically enough, it ends up creating an opportunity to hire more local employees a lot of times, right? Because now they get the resources to help them grow the top line of the business. We got a painting business up in Philadelphia that went from, 4 to 8 million and has added 25 additional painters in their business and has 3 staff with us. And a lot of their growth has been because of our offshore staff helped them drive top lines. They could add more local, people. So it's, as you begin the journey, right, you start identifying where are their constraints, where can I begin the journey? Let me get my hands on the wheel. And just like you experienced, Tom, once you develop confidence, I could tell you how great all this stuff was, right? When we met back at that conference, but it wasn't until you started with someone and you started seeing the results, and then the snowball effect continues. And then you potentially add others, to continue in the path. So,
well, and frankly, Brad, whatever you think the results are, you're only limited by your thinking, because what the team has been able to do are far beyond my original expectations, and they literally grow every day. So it's because of the quality of folks you have working for you, but also it's for, the customer like me. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I'm learning as a customer and client every day. So it's a very symbiotic relationship. It's a very growth-oriented relationship. And if you trust the people you're working with, there's really no limit to what they can do for you.
I appreciate that share. And it's, you're, a lot of it is you're limited by, creativity. It's kind of, when I first started going down this journey and I was doing a lot of speaking all over the world, and plug for speaking. If anybody here is, got organizations and looking for someone to educate on the whole world of offshoring and outsourcing, got a few stories I can tell, but people didn't know what they didn't know, right? And again, it's back to this top of the funnel, or people had read Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Work Week, 15 plus years ago, but weren't sure like what they were capable of. And it's similar to how ChatGPT and AI is today, right? People know that it exists, but it's like, well, what can it actually do? Well, it's not until you get your hands dirty and you start playing around with it that you start really seeing, what it's capable of, and you start using it every single day. And then the momentum kind of, continues. So, well, I appreciate the feedback, Tom, and been great to see your journey. And you've been just a great sounding board for me. Tom's got a great set of wisdom of kind of cross section of all the guests he gets to hear, and kind of his vision of the world has been a great feedback for me as we're kind of growing, our operation. So I appreciate that and the opportunity to serve you. And so we'll conclude on this episode here. Hopefully everybody's gotten some great high takeaway value. Definitely check out those tools that we shared in the beginning there. And hopefully these case studies have been a good insight for you, even though you may not be in the podcasting business, but you've got similar constraints in your organization, a little bit of deeper perspective on what kind of impact it could have. So on that note, if anybody wants to learn more about Tom and his 4,000 podcasts, that you can kind of go learn anything and everything imaginable around compliance, you can go to compliancepodcastnetwork.net, right? Or .com, Tom?
.net.
.net. So compliancepodcastnetwork.net. You can go there and see all these fantastic widgets and graphics that his team has been able to kind of build, and connect with them on everything from TikTok to LinkedIn to Instagram and so forth. And go see it all in practice, right? So now you've kind of heard the story of how the stuff gets cranked out, right? Now go subscribe to some of these things, and actually see kind of the output and kind of know what's, on the back side of it there. So, and for us, if you want to learn about, us at Outsource Access, would love to explore the journey with you. We're very education first, and obviously got this podcast. Go listen to, kind of other episodes, we got posted also on YouTube as well. And, go to our website and, book a discovery call, and happy to just kind of hear your journey and kind of do a mini version of that 2-question exercise. And if you'll send an email to tools@outsourceaccess.com, so that's tools with an S at outsourceaccess.com, and just put compliance in the subject line. So we know it's tied to Tom's episode here. You can imagine we got some VAs, they'll get that, and happy to send you a whole boatload of great tools and resources. We put together a list of 700 tasks. We've done over, 4 or 5 million hours worth of work here at Outsource Access. So we'll put together a bunch of tasks and examples and a template to do that 2-question exercise. And so if you want to go down this journey, the best place to start is figuring out, what do you need to get off your plate or your team's plate? And what are you not getting to due to time, money, and knowledge constraints? We got a nice little template that we can send your way that you can kind of go through with your team if you email us there. So, well, thanks again, everybody. Appreciate your time, Tom. And we look forward to continuing to see your journey up and onward, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.